Good morning. I'm John Dejoia, professional geologist in the state of Wyoming. I work for Strathmore Plus Uranium. I have worked for them since the initial start of this company. This version of Strathmore was formed a little over a year ago. Dev Randhawa called me up one day and says, "John, what are you doing?" And I said, "Not a lot, playing a little golf, shooting, things like that, raising a dog." And he says, "You're going back to work." And I said, "Well, I don't think so." And he said, "Yeah, you are. You're too young." So he said, "What I want to do is start another uranium company based in the United States with our emphasis in Wyoming. And I want you to be the head geologist." And I said, "No, I'm retired. I have been for 8 years." And he says, "No, you're going to work." I said, "Okay," twist my arm. He says, "What I want you to do if you won't come to work is find a geologist for me and some property." And I scratched my head a little bit and said, "I'll get back to you." And I did. I found him a geologist, our vice president, Terrence Osier. And I gave the company the Beaver Rim Properties. They were originally part of one of my management packages 40 years ago. And that's how we started this. Our overview was, and goal was to acquire properties in the state of Wyoming suitable for in situ recovery. And I think we've done that as a starting point. We have kind of branched out a little bit because a lot of properties are taken, as you well know. I had to really scratch to find properties.
John, what a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for the introduction. I'm really going to enjoy talking to you for the next short while, the next brief while. You said you've worked with Strathmore from the beginning, and yet this version is only 1 year old. You've been retired for 8 years. You've got a long career behind you, let alone what remains in front. But how long did he work for Strathmore, and what other forms was that?
Well, I started with Strathmore in, I think it was 2005. I can't remember the exact year. It's been quite a while ago now. And I was hired as vice president, and our goal was to evaluate properties and submit mine permits. Well, I did that for a couple of years, and then Dev wanted to form a partnership with our really good property, Roca Honda, and I became the manager of Roca Honda Resources and senior vice president. And I had to fill 2 hats there. So I've known Dev since about 2005. Okay. And then we sold, we divested about 8 years ago. And I opted to retire rather than continue on with the purchasers.
Yeah. So 8 years ago, kind of 2014. So you're in the middle of the dog years of uranium. You know,
I've been associated with uranium since 1971.
Go on. The year of my birth. The year of my, I was born in 1971. Well,
that was a good year. I got into uranium and you came into the world. What can you ask for?
So what were you did you qualify as a geologist in 1971 and go straight into a uranium company?
Yes, I started working, well, they were actually Utah Construction and Mining, became Utah International. I did my interview in 71, was not able to get to the mine site until 1972. So I started in March of 1972 with Utah International. They hired me over the phone.
There was probably about 200,000 people living in Utah at the time, wasn't there? I mean, it was a tiny population.
Well, it was Utah International, the company, and we had, over 1,000 people probably.
But the state, as it.
Oh, I wasn't in Utah. This was in Shirley Basin, Wyoming.
Oh, okay. So the right. So okay.
Yes, I went to school in Laramie, Wyoming, the University of Wyoming, which is about 90 miles down the road from our Agate and our Night Owl property.
Okay. And how long have you worked in Wyoming?
I worked in Wyoming until I believe it was 90 or 91. I can't remember exactly. But at that point in time, I transferred over to the Idaho National Engineering Lab, excuse me, to work on a nuclear fuel reprocessing center.
Okay, and how long were you on that project, or on that side of the business?
That was a fairly short-lived project. It well exceeded the Department of Energy's estimates. It was deemed virtually impossible to build. Excuse me. So from there, I went over or down to where I worked at Los Alamos National Laboratory in nuclear remediation. I actually remediated, or I was in charge of, remediating the Omega West reactor. So I've been in the nuclear world since 1972.
A lifetime of experience. Fantastic. The West, I mean, I know this is slightly off topic and it's not exactly Strathmore, but this is so interesting. I mean, the West has seen this almost kind of criminalization of the nuclear industry over the last 30 or 40 years, as it's become so unpopular, and it's almost been kind of legislated out of any reinvestment or kind of growth in the West. Do you feel that that's changing now? Do you feel that there are universities producing nuclear scientists, geologists talking about uranium? You know, do you feel there's a renaissance going on?
Absolutely. Mr. Osier and I just spent about an hour and a half on the phone with a professor down at the University of Wyoming who is working on a grant to study a couple of our properties. And he's hoping to get a grant. So things are opening up. The academic world is actually starting to embrace nuclear. We had to embrace it from a technical standpoint, but when students are actively seeking employment and opportunities in the industry, that to me tells me that it's going to open up. You have to have the young people accept it. And they've got, I forget how many people in the geophysics field. I think he said he had 7 that would like to work on this grant. That is really encouraging.
And yet I've heard that a nuclear plant needs, I know it's not the same thing, but a nuclear plant needs about 160 PhDs to work on it. You know, we've got a lot of, as well as the nuclear plant, we've got all of the resources that need developing, the mines that need running, the plants that need working, and then there's the nuclear plant at the end. I mean, so there's a whole kind of integrated upstream aspect of the industry before you even get to the nuclear power generation plant.
And there's a lot of interest right now. You know, it's hard to see it in the media, but when you get behind the lines a little bit, so to speak, you realize that the younger generation is starting to embrace this. Everybody wants wind, they want solar, et cetera, et cetera. However, they are embracing the idea that they have to have base load energy. And to me, this is terribly encouraging.
Yeah. I mean, bring it on, bring it on. So let's go back to the geology and the selection of your areas. You worked in the Shirley Basin and in Wyoming as a geologist for 20 odd years, from 1972 to the early 1990s. And then again from 2005 onwards, till about 2014, so another 10 years in Wyoming. And you have selected these 3 projects, or you brought in Beaver Rim, but you must have had a say on Agate and Night Owl as well, no?
I brought in all 3. Dev and I talked them over. I told him what I thought we had, and he was receptive to acquiring them. We only staked them. We didn't purchase these properties. Mr. Osier had some claims on Beaver Rim. Beaver Rim was originally when I worked at Federal American Partners in the Gas Hills. That area, we had 40 million pounds out there, and we were partnered with Tennessee Valley Authority. And we were never able to go up and explore this area. I always wanted to, but we never had the money. That's when uranium was dying back in the mid-'80s. We weren't allowed to go up and drill it, and I knew there was stuff up there.
How did you know that those? How did you said those 40 million pounds? You know, on based on what? What worked back then?
40-some thousand drill holes. Not on our property, in the Gas Hills. The properties that I controlled with my company. So we knew that this huge body, I hate to use the word ore because economically right now it probably doesn't work, but
yeah,
huge body of mineralization throughout the Gas Hills, and knew the potential. We had a shaft just north of this Beaver Rim property. We had the Muskrat Blackstone claims, and we had the open pit area. It was about 40 million pounds that we had under our arm there. Well, the uranium industry died. I had this in my head. I had a couple of old reports. The easy stuff was picked up down in the basin that had 40-some thousand drill holes on for 40 million pounds. Nobody really seemed to want the stuff on Beaver Rim. It was a little bit deeper. Wasn't explored. There weren't a lot of holes, but there were a lot of indicator holes.
Yeah.
We couldn't have generated a resource. We have holes on the property. Mr. Osier, our vice president, Terrence, actually, when we first started up Strathmore, drilled out there. We have hit ore, but we don't have the drill hole results that we can publish. We know they're there, but from a 43-101 standpoint, we can't tell anybody what's there. But we know it's there. Terrence and I drilled out there.
Because you don't have the core, or because you don't have the assay labs, or because, is there some aspect of the QA/QC?
The drill hole data belongs to the owners, and they won't share. So we are going to go into this property and drill holes to prove out the resource.
Can I just pull up a slide so I can understand what you're talking about? So is
we're talking about the Gas Hills right now.
The Gas Hills map. Okay, let me just put that
right in the middle of your map. I don't mean to get so excited, but I get really worked up on these things. I've studied them for 50 years.
No, that's absolutely fine. I love a bit of excitement. And I am a geologist, so it comes naturally to me. So this is the Strathmore's Beaver Rim Project, Gas Hills Uranium District, Wyoming.
The Strathmore Beaver Rim claims. You see where it says West Diamond, and there's a heavy pink line.
Yes,
there. And then East Diamond in the middle, East Diamond.
Can you see my mouse?
Yes. And then north, go to the east, and another pink, that's the North Sage, and down south is the South Sage property.
As if by magic. Okay, so you were talking about the Gas Hills claims on Beaver Rim, that the easy stuff was drilled out and people were interested in. Where is the easy stuff that people have picked up?
Go to look on the north, draw a diagonal from the southwest corner of your map to the northeast corner of your map, and you'll follow. You can see a rim. If you see that blue line, that is the Cameco property. That's what I used to control when I was with Federal American Partners. And that's where the 40 million pounds are.
Okay, so Cameco have got in the middle it's in the middle here. It says Cameco Properties, 30 to 35 million pounds historical.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. And that's the you've mentioned the word muskrat and blackstone. Okay, I'm getting this in context now.
All right, if you see where your cursor is right now, where it says Blackstone Trend.
Yeah.
That star. We had installed an underground shaft into the ore and were ready to mine when things fell apart in the 80s.
And uranium hit $7 a pound.
Well, it was kind of ugly. It was in the 40s and started rocketing downward. I've actually been down in that shaft and sampled ore. I was a much younger man then. And then that trend, if you follow it to the southwest,
Yeah.
takes you to another shaft called the Atlas Shaft.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right there. That was part of the Peach property owned by American Nuclear,
And
one of our partners.
John, these are all roll front uranium deposits. So these are
Those are all roll front deposits.
Strata bound. It's the redox. It's the chemical boundary.
Yes.
Within the, so it's kind of it's almost like a cigar shaped feature that is running from the southwest to the northeast.
It's almost imagine a tongue 400 feet underground and coat that tongue with sugar. And the sugar is the quote uranium ore. And that's what we're dealing with here. If you look at these arrows here, these arrows represent the areas of the groundwater movement through the formation. That's one of them. You can see we had four major systems coming through here. There you go.
And so these are linear features.
Well, they're tongues. They have a C shape. If you, where are we at now? On the North Sage property, let's go to the East Diamond. It's right in the middle. If you look at the East Diamond, that arrow that you see, that is the pathway of the mineralizing solution. The roll occurs just slightly to the west, makes a C shape with opening to the inside. Over on the North Sage, to the east of there, that other yellow arrow, it has a C shape to the east, opens to the inside.
To the west.
I'm sorry, yes, opens to the west, yes.
Yeah.
And those red dots are old drill holes that we know that they're there. We cannot use the data because we just don't remember exactly what's there. But that was old drilling.
So the fluids that come through here, are you saying that it also flowed through here, and these are the bounding edges of the mineralization?
They're the approximate edges. You know, the bounding edge is very sinuous, and
yeah, of course.
It sometimes gets stacked in multiple S or C sections.
But in principle, if you put a drill hole in here, you might find mineralization. But if you put one out here, you'd expect not to.
That's exactly true. But we don't know for sure because we don't have the drilling in that area to tell you where that mineralizing solution moved through.
No, but I mean, this is the model. This is the hypothesis at the moment that within these two curved arrows is potentially mineralization. And then you would go and do the test work and you would have to adjust the arrow according to the data that you find.
Exactly. And the same when you go over to, and notice where that star, the shaft is.
Yeah.
We're right on target. We think we have the conduit for the gas hills mineralization.
Okay. Now, quick question. Does in your experience in these kinds of deposits, is the mineralization concentrated around the edges, or is it evenly distributed across the middle, across the section of the tongue, or is it too hard to say? You just got to do the work and it is where it is?
It's usually present all through the sinuosity of the deposit. And the interior, we call them top limb and bottom limb ore. It's usually thin, sometimes spotty, low grade, or usually low grade. But that's the channel that everything moved through. The edges where the water moved out, and you got your reduction interface, oxidation reduction interface out by the arrows. That's where we usually have the high grade. The high grade butts very tightly against the altered interior, the leached area, and the uranium works its way exterior to the tongue. So in other words, in the North Sage, the C shape will open to the inside, and the higher grade will be wherever that channel happens to be, or the edge of the channel, and then it'll grade out to the east. The opposite is true at the East Diamond property.
Yeah, it's okay. So this brings to mind the sugar coating analogy.
Yes.
So you've got the alteration fluid coming through here, and it's actually the contact with the oxidizing fluids.
Yes.
That is the catalyst for the precipitation of the uranium oxides on the edges of that plume of kind of altering fluids.
Yes, and that's exactly right.
It's the interface which is the crucial geography or geometry that you're looking for.
Yes, the interface is where the high grade is. However, in my experience, we have also been able to mine and make money on limb ore. Now, depending on the strength of the mineralizing solution, the length of time that it continued to leach, you may find some barren spots in there.
Yeah.
But the interior is usually leached pretty clean. There may be a lens or two here and there.
Yeah.
But the altered interior is pretty much devoid of mineralization.
Yeah, because the uranium was carried in solution, it altered, and the uranium got transported to the point where it was chemically unstable in solution, and it precipitated out. And
yes,
does what's the determining feature on that catalyst? Are there some controls on pressure, for example, is faulting or brecciation a contributing factor to precipitation, or is it mostly 99% driven by the chemistry of the oxidizing fluid?
Most areas are driven by the chemistry of the mineralizing solutions. However, if you recall back on that map, we had the two arrows on the right and one in the middle going to slightly to the west. There is a geomorphologic feature in there. There's a high, and that actually split where the mineralizing solutions went. But what we're so high on this property for is this was the conduit area. This is where the mineralizing solutions went through, and we now mined, or up to this date, have mined most of the gas hills north of that blue line. But south of that chemical blue line, for the most part, the mineral is still there.
Okay, so this is kind of wide open exploration. You've got this conduit area here. You've got this conduit area here.
Yep.
You've targeted the outside edge of this. Your best guess of the outside edge of this side, and again here. This looks particularly data sparse through here, but there must be. You've obviously got some reason for selecting that, as also the availability of the ground. Where are the claims that Mr. Ozier had?
Well, he had some of this pink property, which we acquired from him. I didn't know he had picked it up. I just knew he was a good geologist, and he worked with us at Strathmore. And when I said, Dev, I'm too old to work, I'll help you. And
you need a runner.
I needed somebody who had enough experience, who was smart, and who could do this. We got lucky that he owned a few claims out here.
And
now we also staked some after we hired him.
Okay. And the data in here, you said that it's private, it's with the owner. What do you mean by that?
Well, somebody else used to own that property, and they have the drill holes, and I think they would like to sell them, but right now we're not willing to buy them. We'll go drill a few of our own holes. We've got to verify the project anyway. Even if we had all their drilling, we would still go in and verify this project. We'd put core holes down, do some fill-in drilling, just to verify what we really have. There's an awful lot of projects that got staked that really weren't there. Everybody thought they were.
So they own historic data, but they don't have any claim on the land itself.
No, it's our land now.
And what's the plan? What happens in 2023? In 2023 you're going to try and do arrive at what point on your understanding of those Beaver Rim properties?
We have gotten we got an exploration permit last fall. The weather kind of drove us out. We didn't have enough time to enact our exploration permit by the time we got it. So what we're planning to do is drill some exploration holes to just verify what we know and where we know it. And we may be off a couple 100 feet. You know, you can never tell when you're drilling 800 to 1,000 feet. Anyway, we're going to do that. We'll probably put in 1 or 2 core holes, and we intend to acquire additional properties where we are very confident there could be mineralization.
Okay, so is it fair to say you're still on the building the land package, and
Yes.
you're going to do a little bit of proof of concept work?
Yes, this property is right. It's the Gas Hills. This is the area that nobody drilled because the ore was anywhere from 100 to 400 feet deep. When I left when they closed down Federal American Partners, we had 3 pits, open pits in ore. It was 14 million pounds sitting in open pits. We had 8 million pounds at that UPZ underground. American Nuclear, which was part of Federal American. They were one of the partners that formed the partnership. At the Peach property, that Atlas shaft, they were planning an underground. We know it's there. And the Muskrat and Blackstone trend is highly mineralized. I had done resources on that when I worked there. We used to own it.
But the ultimate goal here is not to mine it, but to do an ISR project. Is that correct?
Yes, we're looking at it as an ISR at this point in time. The material is probably one of the best for ISR. Very permeable. It's just a good project for ISR.
And are there other ISR projects in the area that are being revitalized or started
Cameco
up?
has gotten an ISR project for areas in that blue zone. They have actually filled the shaft or reclaimed the shaft. I don't know if they filled it.
And are doing an ISR around the shaft? Or they're using the shaft for its.
No, they're not going to use the shaft. There'd be no control on it. I think it was a 14-foot shaft.
Yeah.
I've been in it, but it's been so long ago. I'm sorry. But it would be almost uncontrollable. But that Muskrat Blackstone trend, very recoverable, no open pits nearby to interfere with it. And our only difference is we're a little deeper up on Beaver Rim.
Which is
I'm very optimistic.
Right. Well, you're a geologist, you're entitled to be optimistic.
You have to be.
Yeah.
We don't have a choice. Otherwise, we'd be on the street.
or depressed watching Netflix.
Yes.
Tell me, thank you very much for the introduction to Beaver Rim. Can you tell me a little? Can we just shift focus to the Shirley Basin? Can you tell me a little bit about?
I would love to shift. I'd love to shift to Shirley Basin. I started in Shirley Basin in '72, and my first job with Utah International was an ore controlman on the night shift. I showed up. They gave me a Geiger counter and a Mack truck. If you can believe this, I'm 24 years old, 23 years old. They give me a Mack truck. I've never driven a Mack truck in my life. And a Geiger counter on night shift and said, go down in the ore, and anytime you're down in the pit, whenever you find ore, put a flag in it. That was my instruction manual. By morning, I was nearly frozen to death. I didn't know the purpose of the truck was a starting shack that I could get in and turn it on and get warm. I stood out in 20 below zero all night long, looking for pink flags. And I did find some. You know, the Geiger counter would go to a certain level and you put a flag in the ground and leave it for the day shift. And I did that for several months. And then they said, geez, he must know what he's doing a little bit. So they put me on day shift. And what an eye-opener. a lot of ore made its way to the wrong places. There was no training program. Dilution was horrid. We were mining with 3 cubic meter buckets on excavators with a crew that basically we picked up on the bar on Friday nights.
Yeah.
This was the crews, and we probably wasted 50% of what we mined that first year that they were open.
Well,
now that's horrible.
It is horrible, but that's how improvements happen. You start low and you get better.
And then they said, what can we do? So I put together a training program, and I got to actually have an office with heat and mice. But we put together a training program. We obviously were able to conquer the problems in the pit. My main job was pit geologist and assisting with the mine superintendent to move the ore to the pad for the mill. We had our own mill right there.
More roll front mineralization.
All roll front. This was where the roll front model really was developed.
And how did you pick up Night Owl and Agate?
Well, I worked in Shirley Basin for right around 9 years, and I asked for a transfer to Africa with the company, and they responded, "How about Riverton, Wyoming, which is over at the Gas Hills?" So, being a good employee, I went over there. I think it was about 76. I was in the mine, and this gentleman, an older gentleman, came in to the mine superintendent and said, "I've got some property up around Shirley Rim. Do you have somebody who can take me up there?" And it was Mac Tilley, if anybody knows of Mac, God bless him. He said, "Dejoia will take you up." And I said, "Geez, Mac, I don't know where this property is." He says, "Well, you just go through Heward's and keep going." Well, I said, "Well, I can do that." So this older gentleman, Mr. Corder, and I took off. He had a drill rig with him, and we took his drill rig up to, he had coordinates and stuff. We had maps. We took his drill rig up to Night Owl. And, he said, "Thank you." And we talked for a little bit, and he invited me up for a campfire dinner one night. And I went up there and I said, "How you doing?" He says, "Oh, we just can't get a hole down. We're having a lot of trouble." He says, "But we got one done." And he says, "We have ore in it." And he says, "We mined back here in the 50s. I said, "You did? I'd never heard of this. I worked in Shirley Basin 9 years. I'd never heard of the Night Owl property." Anyway, I visited with this gentleman a few more times. And, that was 40 some years ago. Dev said, "We need another property." And I said, "I've been wanting to go and do something with Night Owl, and I believe the folks that owned it are gone now, and I think it's open." So we had Terrence go out, and sure enough, it was open. It had been open since 1986, I believe.
Wow.
So we claimed the Night Owl property. I had never seen the ore, didn't know that they had a little pit there or an excavation. And, Terrence went out and says, "You're not going to believe this." He says, "There's mineral laying on the surface." I said, "You're kidding me." He says, "No." So anyway, we did some sampling, and it actually exceeds the grade in Shirley Basin from all the pits. That was about 2,200s down there. We've had samples as high as 0.36. That's pretty close to 7 pounds per ton. Not quite.
3,600 ppm. And is it amenable to in situ leaching, or is this an open pit kind of?
I sincerely doubt it. My idea for this property, it's right at the surface.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I mean, we went out there this summer, Dev and Jamie and one of our, from our board, and we were picking up ore or mineralization on the surface. We had stuff that pegged the counter on the surface. These poor folks from years back mined under where the ore is. This is not in a roll front deposit. It's in a brecciated limestone of Mississippian age. It's all fractured. The solutions from the source rock for all of Shirley Basin is within about 2 miles of this property. the Granite Mountains.
And this.
If
this
you
breccia-
see this, you'll get excited too.
Yeah, no, I've seen that. I've seen the rocks, and this is why I was asking about: is it all roll front, and is it suitable
No.
for ISR? Because this looks different.
No,
It's the limestone maybe of Mississippian age, but the mineralization presumably came later.
we don't know the exact age on the mineralization. This is something that Terrence and I are going to be working on. And this is why we are enrolling the university, or hope to enroll the University of Wyoming to assist us. This is a highly technical deposit that nobody has ever figured out. Old literature talks about stuff leaching down through the White River and being deposited on this old surface. And we don't know if that's true or not. I don't think it is. I think it came from the mountains during the Laramide orogeny. I don't know that for a fact.
Okay. And so the breccia could be some kind of overpressuring, or some kind of it's a kind of a hydrothermal breccia, or it's a kind of a fluid breccia rather than a tectonic breccia, or a kind of a basal breccia.
Yes. And these, right now we've identified autunite, which is a hydrous calcium uranyl phosphate, and other highly mobile uranium minerals. I had identified lebogite years and years and years ago, where it deposited in old underground workings. This stuff looks very similar. We've had high grade solution movements. It's not a roll front at all. Now, we've got it on the surface. And this material, this Madison limestone, is dipping towards the agate property, the other edge of the basin, at about 7 degrees. So we can do a fairly, I want to say, low-cost exploration project down to a depth of a few hundred feet. And if we're still finding it there, which I kind of expect we will, I can't say what I think it is. It's very good news.
So you like the scale potential on this? I mean, are we talking down a fault into the
no, right down the dip slope?
Down the dip slope. Have you got any idea of kind of strike length on this? I mean, any kind of understanding of scale?
Well, right now we have just laid out where the original Night Owl property is or was, and right now we have, I believe it's pretty close to 2,000 acres. We had about half that, and then this fall we hired a company out of Reno, Nevada, to go in and fly this property and do some geophysical surveys.
Can I just pull it up? I want to have a look at this with you.
We nearly doubled our claim block after we did these geophysical surveys, because partway through it, not only did we identify the surface ore that we had sampled, we now see a surface or very shallow trend from that point to the southeast. So we acquired additional properties on the southeast. We also see it down dip towards the interior of the basin. If you look on the Night Owl property there up in the northeast corner, if just divide that block in half.
So on the neck.
Yeah, right there. Take your cursor and go just to the west slowly. Right there. Right there is where where the little finger on the hand is where we found the mineralization of about 6 to 7 pounds per ton.
Yeah.
And from there, if you go just slightly southeast, you see that ridge?
I see that little ridge
right there.
Yeah.
Follow that ridge and go down to the southeast corner of the property.
Somewhere around here.
Yeah. We have a mineralization showing up along that trend. And
okay, nice.
If you also go at a right angle to that trend,
down dip,
down to the southwest, same thing.
Yeah.
It's flat lying, and it looks like it's laying in the Madison at about the dip slope.
Okay, nice. So,
which brings us back to your original question. I hate to do this to you.
No.
You said, is it an ISR property? I don't look at it as ISR. To me, in my mind right now, this is a heap leach type property. but a very controlled heap leach. Be indoors, concrete floor with a dip on this floor of 5 to 7 degrees, a slope, liner, and we'll pump the leaching material in at the high end and move it down to the low end and recover it in a trough, just as nature emplaced it.
Yeah.
To be covered, won't be out in the weather. We don't have a groundwater pollution problem then. Don't have an airborne problem. And this is not going to be a 2,000 ton a day operation. You know, be much smaller than that, but a good economic operation, I believe.
So interesting. So what's the? I noticed also on the map that the Agate property to the southwest had a whole series of historic drill holes. So you may have access to that data. Do you have data, or is that also with the previous owners?
Can we put the map back up again, please?
Yes, of course.
You don't have to put it up. I can just talk to it. I worked out there for a long
No.
time.
Here we go.
All right. If you go over to the Agate property and you see these yellow mineralizing solution trends again.
Yeah.
The C shape over down at the Agate property is going to be to the west.
To the east.
Or to the west. The C will open to the east.
So this is altered and this is unaltered.
Yes.
Yeah, gotcha.
Good. I didn't know if you'd recognize that. The altered is where the little hand is.
Yeah.
Now, Cameco has a property for in situ recovery just north of us there. You can see it.
Yeah, £6 to £8 million M&I.
I worked at the place that Terrence has labeled Lucky Mac Mining, and that's where I mined about 20 million pounds.
Yeah, in here.
Typical roll front. We were at the north end where the yellow arrow is there.
Yeah.
We had both sides. Instead of being a C shape, we had the whole ellipsoid.
Yeah, gotcha.
We had both sides, top and bottom.
Yeah.
And they had solution mined that area years ago. I mean, back in the late 50s, early 60s. First in situ recovery operation in the United States was back in the mid 60s there, late 60s. They had solution mined it. I did a core study and found out that what I thought was fully as much as they mined was still there, and it was.
But coming back to Agate property, this data here, do you have this data?
With those are historic drill holes, the red.
Yeah.
And they were drilled by Kerr McGee back in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
Those drill holes, we have the logs available at the Wyoming Geological Survey. And there's about, I think Terrence said 300 to 400. He thinks there could be up to 500 logs available. So that's a lot of information. And you can see from the drilling there where they're concentrated. That's probably where the interface is.
And so next year, it's data collation from Agate. And are you going to also looking to pick up more properties in this area?
Yes, I'd like to, because you can see it. There's something going off the southwest corner of the property. There's something coming off the southeast. We seem to have contained it pretty well in the northeast, but to the west of us, I have and we're trying to look at this right now, another old Kerr McGee area that was shown in old literature. Nobody ever did much with it, and I think we're going to try to pick it up also.
As a whole, for the work program of this year, are you going to do some proof of concept work or some early stage exploration on the ground? Is that part of the plan once the weather clears, spring and summer?
When the weather clears, Night Owl, we're going to go in and finish our geophysical work, our aerial work, and then hopefully we're going to have a couple of students working up there on their PhD theses.
Yeah.
At Agate, we want to, and we're going to also do some drilling and maybe some test pits up there
in Night Owl.
And you can see they're not very far apart, 10 or 12 miles. And down at Agate, Agate is typical roll front, 15 to 150 feet deep. Way, way, way shallower, and it's saturated. The permeability and porosity is excellent. I used to go out when I was just a young geologist to see a friend of mine worked out on the Kerr-McGee rigs. He wouldn't show me the cuttings or the logs, but he said, sometimes the drillers don't get them covered at night. And I would go out and look at the cuttings and see what they had. And they had perfect roll front cuttings.
Yeah. How do you recognize it? Is that, do you actually get a kind of yellowish tinge to the?
Yep. The altered interior would be a greenish color, limonite staining, greenish to a brownish color. That's the limonite stain where the mineralizing solution, the leaching solutions moved through. And to the west, you'll find virgin ground, which is a gray color that grades to a dark color where the roll front is, the higher grade mineralization.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's uraninite down there.
Okay. John, thank you so much. It's been a really fascinating talk. We better leave it there. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you and hearing about your experiences there, and seeing what you've got planned for the company, which I think is, you sound as if you're enjoying it. You sound as if you're glad you're not playing golf and just looking after your dog, but you seem to be quite enthused about getting back in the saddle, so to speak, of the uranium horse.
Dev said I was too young to retire. I'm loving it. And the people I don't know if this is on the interview or not, but you can cut it if you don't want it in there. Dev has treated me great. All the other folks, Jordan, Jeremy, Jamie, just wonderful people. We have a great geologist and vice president in Terrence Osier. Very, very pleased with my situation. I don't draw a salary. This is like somebody who works in the store and says, I don't get a commission, but yeah. I'm very high on these projects. As a geologist, we never know what we'll get, but everything points the right direction. If you ever have a chance, I'd be happy to take you out.
Oh, one of these days, I'd love to see some uranium geology. I worked in West Africa on a uranium project on the DASA project with Global Atomic, and that was just totally amazing. But I'd love to. Yeah, but I'd love to see the Wyoming deposits, but that'll have to be another day. But for now, thank you very much for your time, and good luck with the projects.
Thank you. I enjoyed talking with you. If I'm too long-winded, just cut some of it out.
I'm sure Crux might do some editing, and we'll try and get this to be a kind of a concise interview. But it's certainly fascinating. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Goodbye. Have a great holiday season.